Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about the importance of how we as community respond to those facing adversity. But first, I want you to think about your community, whether this is the smaller community of your family and friends or the larger environment where you live and work. Now think about what it is that you like about your community. Is it the feeling of being involved, being accepted, feeling grounded? Because I think that for many of us, what we love about our communities is interacting with the people in them. It's having the conversations, feeling their compassion, having their help when we need it most. And I think there's something incredible about communities to support us through the unpredictable times of our lives, times of family struggles, emotional traumas, and physical health issues. Our communities bring us hope. So, in your community, if you were to interact with someone who'd been a victim of sex trafficking, what would you say? Or to someone struggling with addiction, how would you treat them? Or to someone who's tangled up in the generational web of poverty and homelessness, how would you bring them hope? How would you respond? Today we know that over 27 million people are enslaved by human trafficking in the world. And right here in the United States, we know that at least 100,000 children are sexually trafficked every year. In the United States, there are 23 million people struggling with addiction, but only 10% of them are receiving the care they need to recover, and many are dying. Worldwide, millions of people are hungry and millions are living in poverty, with thousands upon thousands of these individuals represented in our communities. These numbers and the issues they represent just scratch the surface of the adversity that is faced by those on the fringes of our society and healthcare system. And I think that sometimes knowingly and sometimes unknowingly, we keep these individuals isolated and stigmatized by the way we label them, by the way we treat them, and the way we interact with them. So in knowing this, how will we create an environment that is safe enough and collaborative enough so that those so desperately in need of community will find it? In North Carolina, there's a couple named Chris and Anna Smith, and they learned that of the 100,000 children in the U.S. that are being sexually trafficked, that at least 50% are boys. Now, because of this commonly held belief that sex trafficking only affects girls, boys often do not speak up or get the services they need. And for this reason, at the time, there were no homes or shelters that specifically addressed this population, and there was no place for these boys to go. So Chris and Anna, they stepped up and they did something about it. They founded an organization called Restore One, a nonprofit that provides services to the boys and men who are recovering from sex trafficking. And they're working on opening the nation's first safe home for these boys called the Anchor House in North Carolina. But despite the good of this initiative and the need for a place like the Anchor House, they intersected with an ugly side of community. The side of community that creates signs and speaks hurtful words and tries to stop initiatives like the Anchor House from happening. The side of community whose arm's length words often does real damage in the hearts and minds of those who are stigmatized and struggling. And unfortunately, this example of negative community response is not an isolated incident. This last summer, I was a part of an initiative to open a halfway house in a community where there were no options for sober housing for those struggling with addiction. And again, there were signs, letters, and hurtful words being exchanged to keep these people out. There was talk of these people tainting the neighborhoods and the community. And I had the opportunity to sit down with a woman who was a part of this community, and she shared that with me that she'd been hearing the words spoken about the future residents of the halfway house in her community. And she looked at me and she said, "I am one of these people." And she started to cry. She shared that she had just celebrated 10 months sober, that she was getting her life back on track, and that she was happy. But in hearing the words spoken by her community, her home, she was devastated. I think we so often forget that these people are real people, and they hear us. And the words we speak and the way we respond to their needs can help them or harm them. We have an immense effect because the way we respond matters. I believe that the signs are not the answer. I believe that the hurtful words are not the answer. I believe that in keeping ourselves at arm's length, we are keeping these individuals isolated and out of answers and without hope. The way we respond matters. Thankfully, the broader community surrounding Restore One in North Carolina understood the weight of their response. And despite the part of their community that opposed the Anchor House, the majority of their community advocated. They got involved, they donated, they helped, they volunteered, and they ended up donating so much that the Anchor House was able to buy land and establish its facilities completely debt-free. It's an amazing example of the power that exists in community and how we can make change possible when we show up and when we respond appropriately. So how will you help? How will you respond? How will you look someone in the eyes who's facing tremendous adversity and give them hope? Because I believe that together as a community, we are powerful. And I believe that we can be the catalyst in transitioning the ideas of social innovation from just an idea and initiative into reality. Because I believe that the initiatives aren't enough. The initiatives need the catalysts, and the catalysts are the community. And I believe that community can transform lives. But we must remember that it all starts with us. So how will you respond? Thank you.